Sweet chin music, and I won't pass the ox. Robin Lindbergh, Kevin Zwicker. Are you a recovering Drake fan yet?
Dude, come on, man. You keep asking me this question like I'm supposed to tell you that I'm not on off the bandwagon, bro. I'm in it. I'm OVO locked in.
Yeah, but how? Like, not like us. I think it just keeps getting bigger. like, I'm almost imagining because it is all right. Well, you say that it is going to be the song of the summer. I think that's almost a guarantee at this
Possibly,
point.
yeah.
And just like I'm just thinking about like the clubs like A minor, like it's just
Dude, let's let's just take a second to think about this, right? That is insane that a song that's going to be played in the club is going to have people shouting out A minor or a certified pedophile. Just when we think about that is insane.
That's the genius of Kendrick Lamar. I mean, if you really think about it, and he has been quoted. I think every wrestling show has been referencing this. I'm pretty sure Swerve Strickland did it on Dynamite.
Yeah, he did.
CM Punk obviously did it on Raw, and Shawn Michaels invited them to come settle it or whatever on NXT or wherever he invited them because of that reference. I mean, not only did Kendrick cite sweet chin music, I believe he also called Drake a jabroni on Not Like Us. So if Kendrick, as they say, might know ball a little bit, might know graps a little bit. I wouldn't have expected that from him.
Dude, I think that the promos that The Rock was cutting the last few weeks that he was on TV was true. I feel like for the very first time, probably since the Attitude Era, wrestling is super mainstream. Like this is probably the most times I've been asked by people in my inner circle about wrestling. And these are people who could have cared less about wrestling at all, probably 6-7 months ago.
All right, so let's compare some rappers and wrestlers. I thought that was a fun thing to do. See where we can go with that. I'll start with Kendrick. I did when I did Busted Open with Denise on Saturday. I said you would think Kendrick and Drake was The Rock and Stone Cold, but it's more like Bret Hart and Goldberg, a master tactician who's loved by the fans against an attraction who who doesn't appreciate the art form.
The disrespect is insane, dude. If we were really going to compare any rapper and wrestler, Goldberg, if we're going to use him in any example, I think the prime person, honestly, dude, is 50 Cent. If you think about Goldberg, his run where he was the hottest of hottest was about 2 years. Really was around, 98 to, 97 in that range. And, 50 Cent, his reign on top was about 2003 to 2005 when he was at his hottest. And they're both guys who have capitalized on those short runs, almost, multiple decades after.
Yeah, no, I think that's actually really good. I would say, when you compare 50 Cent's run, the only other one that's kind of like that to me is DMX. So I feel like he works for Goldberg as either 50 Cent or DMX in this, thing of analogies. Let's go to your boy Drizzy Drake for a second, because if I want to be fair, here's what I came up with, and let me know what you think. Okay. John Cena.
That's exactly who I was gonna go with when you were gonna discuss this subject. I was gonna go with Cena.
Because Cena was on top for a minute, Drake was on top for a minute, but Cena also had people revolt against him, thought he was corny, all those sort of things. So to me, that's probably the best parallel I could draw.
I believe so too. And if you remember, even in the biggest, moments of when Cena was, getting really divisive reactions from the crowd, when you had half the crowd chanting Cena sucks and, half the crowd chanting let's go Cena, the dude was the top merch seller. Just like how Drake is the top selling artist, maybe not at this moment because of the Kendrick, but overall, he's the top selling artist, So I think that's an extremely, extremely good comparison, to be honest with you.
Let's go to Kendrick. I almost think he's kind of like Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels combined in a way. Like he's a little bit more charismatic than Bret Hart on the mic with the deliveries and stuff that we've seen. So that's like the Shawn part of it. But he's the best in the ring, as we've seen on the mic. So that's both Bret and Shawn, and the excellence of execution like Bret. And if he hates you, he'll really hate you, like Brett and Shawn hated each other. So that's where I'm putting Kendrick Lamar right now, somewhere in between Shawn Michaels and Bret the Hitman Hart.
All right, bro. I got the perfect comparison for you. And let
Uh,
me finish before you
okay.
cut me
Okay.
off because I know you're not gonna like it. Hornswoggle. Not just because they're both short in stature, but because they both have memorable moments in their runs. Hornswoggle was Vince McMahon's bastard son. Kendrick, he had the control verse. Hornswoggle was the unanimous GM. Kendrick has this battle. It's a pretty fair comparison in my opinion. I'm just not sure that Hornswoggle has a size 7.
I'm going to take the banner down for a second so people can see your name as Kevin Zwicker, because you just did a better job than Drake dissing Kendrick Lamar in the whole battle. I was trying to think of like my favorite Drake line from the whole battle is actually, Kendrick just opened his mouth. Someone just go to him and grab me right now. Like, that's my favorite line from him in the whole battle.
Dude, you want to know something? This is kind of off topic, but you want to know something about that song, the Family Matters song. I think that the hardest disses that he had on those songs were not directed to Kendrick. Like the lines that he gave The Weeknd, I thought was hilarious. Where he said they play The Weeknd in the spots where the boys have more pride, and then the rhymes that he had for A$AP Rocky and Ross and things like that. I felt like if this is the narrative is 20v1, right? I feel like he killed the other 19. But the one that was the most important was the one that was left standing.
Well, I think that was a very, very bad tactical error on his part, honestly, throughout this entire beef, is to feed into that narrative. Because I said from the beginning, I did videos at you don't have to kill all these guys, you just got to kill Kenny. And Kendrick Lamar was not ganging up with anybody else. It was Kendrick Lamar on track after track, going right at Drake, right at Drake. And I never felt like Drake went right at Kendrick Lamar.
That was such a strange strategy for me too. I'm not sure how big you are into MMA, but Ronda Rousey, we both know that when she was in UFC, how dominant she was, right? Until she ran into Holly Holmes, right? If anybody remembers that fight, Ronda was kind of toying, bobbing her head, moving around, not taking Holly Holmes serious, and got knocked out. I feel like this is what happened with Drake. I felt like he thought that he was so big that no matter what was going to happen, he was going to win. And he underestimated the talent that is Kendrick Lamar.
Pride come before the fall, almost certainly, right? Let's go back a little bit before we go forward. I was thinking about Hulk Hogan, and he's a tough one. And I thought it's got to be like Run DMC or the Beastie Boys or something like the artists that broke the genre in a way, right? Like that's to me maybe Hulk Hogan. I mean, perhaps they aren't as big respectively as Hogan wound up being in wrestling, but that's as close as I thought I could get to appropriate.
Yeah, I would if I had to like gun to my head, I would probably say Run DMC is probably the easiest comparison. And even then it's kind of hard because like Hogan, Run DMC was big, all right, in their time, but Hogan was like everywhere, and if there wasn't a Hogan and Vince McMahon that tandem, wrestling probably wouldn't be where it is today. And no matter what artist, I could think about, I don't know if there is that one single person that's important to rap that how Hogan is important to wrestling.
Biggie and Pac is tough. I'm gonna do a cop out. Let's just call Biggie and Pac Raw versus Nitro.
You know who I was thinking, man? I think Biggie and Pac is Austin and Rock.
That's correct in a sense, except for I already had Austin and Rock lined up for other people. Here's who I had Austin and Rock lined up for. Austin is Eminem, just like this meteoric, like that and Eminem is still active and still has a career, but it felt like it was much more for a shorter period of time than maybe like not as short as like Goldberg or any of that stuff, but not like this elongated duration. And I had Hove as The Rock, the guy who talks smack the best, and then went on and also, had his hands in a whole bunch of other projects and the like. So I had Jay as The Rock and Eminem as Stone Cold Steve Austin. I agree with the Biggie and Pac comparison at the same time, but then I don't know what to do with Jay-Z and Eminem.
That's true. The reason why I say they're Biggie is Pac is because, you know, you hear a lot of like older hip hop fans saying, you know, we want hip hop to come back. We want people to sound like Biggie and Pac. We want them to rap like Biggie and Pac. And, you know, when you talk to a lot of casual wrestling fans who aren't really too connected on what the current product is, you always hear things like, man, I want the Attitude Era back. I want things, you know, I'd watch if it was like the Attitude Era back. And the two people who were the main, you know, cornerstones of the Attitude Era was Rock and Austin. So that's why I like to use that comparison.
That's why I said Raw versus Nitro is Biggie and Pac. All right, how about the Wu-Tang Clan as NWO? I think that, you know, as a clique that sort of shook up the game, that was different than everything else at the time.
They share a lot of similarities, you know, and one of the similarities, you know, is the fact that it felt like there was 100 members of the Wu-Tang Clan. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the NWO's run in WCW, it felt like there was 100 members of the NWO. But another aspect that I don't think people talk about enough is just both their impacts on fashion. Man, you know, me and you, we both been to wrestling shows before. And if you sat and looked around the crowd, you're going to bound to see an NWO shirt. Same thing with the Wu-Tang Clan, man. You could walk around, you know, your local park, your local Walmart, or whatever, your grocery store, and you're bound to see a 6-year-old little kid with a Wu-Tang Clan shirt. You know, so they both really, you know, they've penetrated pop culture in such a way that it feels like they're as similar as a similar can get.
All right, let's try and run through some other ones. What do you think of Ice Cube and CM Punk?
You know who I think is the perfect guy for CM Punk? And it's kind of the obvious one because of both the locale is Kanye. Because they're both.
That is good. I'll give you that.
Because they're both guys that people either really love and can do no wrong, or you just hate their guts. You know, and obviously they're both from Chicago, and they're both very controversial. As soon as you say their name, you know, you type in their name in Twitter, you know, things are blowing up. So I feel like those two guys, that comparison of Ye and Punk is perfect.
No, you've had some good ones. That one's really good too. I'll concede to that one. Trying to think of who are the biggest rappers that we haven't mentioned. Snoop, Wayne, Outkast.
You know, a person who I would think would maybe be Wayne, and I'm trying to think of somebody who is very prolific, you know, and has reinvented, probably like a guy like Chris Jericho. You know, this is a guy who's been around, you know, for a really long time. You know, and you remember Wayne, he started out young, so you're older than me. So you have an image of your head of Chris Jericho when you were younger, and I have an image of my head of Chris Jericho when I was younger. So it's kind of like Wayne, you know, you probably, you know, were there for the Hot Boys. I remember his run in 07. You know, we both have different visions of those two guys. So I think Jericho and Wayne are pretty good.
No, you're good at this. That's why we're doing these rapper wrestling conversations. That's our vibe right here. You know, we sometimes it'll be rap, sometimes it'll be wrestling, and in this case, it is both. So Snoop, what about Ric Flair for Snoop?
You know, there's the easy link, you know, because they both, you know, are in the cannabis business now. So that could kind of be a thing. And the fact that they're both, you know, I wouldn't say, well, technically Flair has been active wrestling in the last couple of years. They're both guys who are generational, just like how we spoke about Wayne, you know, and they're both guys who are able to switch their image in different ways. You know, Snoop, you think about Snoop in the 90s, you know, it's this tough gangster rapper now. And you think about him now, he's sitting on the couch, you know, cooking up, you know, food with Martha Stewart. You know, and Ric Flair, you know, he was this guy back in the day who was doing 45-minute matches with Ricky Steamboat.
And now he's getting kicked out of airport bars.
You know, chicken wings and energy drinks.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because you can go from one side to the other. Because I'm thinking, I was like, okay, who's Outkast? And then on the other side of it, I was like, oh no, we haven't done the Undertaker or Roman Reigns yet either.
Dude, that is so tough. When you say okay, you know what? I got a guy, Nas. Because Nas is a guy who, once you speak about, you know, amongst rappers, they're always quick to praise him. And if you know anything about wrestling, The Undertaker, he's always praised for being this locker room leader and this guy who's, you know, respected amongst all his peers. And I feel like Nas is respected amongst all his peers as well. And if we think about, you know, Nas's era and The Undertaker's era when they were at, you know, at the top, they weren't always the top guys, but they were in the mix, you know. So I feel like that's probably the best comparison.
No, you're nailing it. You're nailing it. All right, so we got to get Outcast. I think we got to get Roman. You know, who else? Who else are we missing that is like a real heavy hitter? I think those are the biggest names that I don't think we've associated yet.
This isn't a bit, well, for people who are younger, this isn't a huge heavy hitter in the rap game, but a comparison that I think I can compare with a wrestler is Little Uzi and Jeff Hardy. You know, because these are both guys who are very charismatic, and their fashion choices. If you look at Hardy, you know, in his peak, you know, with his brother Matt in the early 2000s, you know, you have really baggy pants and these see-through really tight shirts and these rainbow colors, and you have Uzi, you know, rocking a purse and a skirt and colored nails. I feel like these are guys who are kind of have this Pod Piper, you know, esque effect on people, where it's like they just really love these two guys and are sucked in by just their energy.
No, I'm feeling that. I'm feeling that. Yeah, but who is Roman? Who's like dominated for such a long period of time that we haven't mentioned? Is there any? I mean, is Roman then? Is Roman 50 Cent and Goldberg is DMX? I mean, who's the equivalent of Roman Reigns for it? Because I feel like we're shortchanging Roman, or is it just that we don't have the next guy in hip hop yet? I mean,
I don't think
it could be Kendrick. We could go back and make Kendrick. That's what I'll do with Kendrick. He's the tribal chief. You got to acknowledge him.
That is such BS. It's insane. All right. I don't think there is a Roman, you know, because okay, who the two current, let's just be fair, right? Unbiased. The two current biggest rappers in the game are Kendrick and Drake, right?
Yeah.
These guys are 30 plus, almost 40. I don't feel like there is this guy who's in his 20s who is, you know, the obvious heir apparent, you know, like how Roman was the obvious heir apparent to Cena. I thought it was Little Baby, but he's kind of faded, you know, recently. So I don't think we have a Roman now, dude.
Kendrick. How about Outkast as Macho Man Randy Savage?
That's a perfect comparison. Two very underappreciated group. Outkast, I feel, is a very underappreciated group of how great they are. And I feel like Randy Savage isn't thrown in the GOAT conversation enough.
And he's got all that, you know, like
a flamboyant look, yeah.
Yeah, the flamboyant thing that kind of goes along with the vibe with Andre 3000. LL Cool J as Andre the Giant?
That is pretty fair because I feel like LL was big and Andre was also big figuratively and attraction wise. And I feel like sometimes, you know, especially with the younger audience now, I feel like these are two guys that really get forgot about often, about like really just how big they were. So I feel like these are also two guys who are very underappreciated, and I think that, you know, that's a perfect comparison.
Rakim is Don Morocco.
I was gonna say like Bruno Sammartino.
Bruno Sammartino, yeah.
Because for me, you know, as a wrestling fan, I know who Bruno Sammartino is, obviously. All right, but I can't sit there and lie to you and say I've watched the man's match. And obviously, you know, I'm a younger guy. I'm 28. I know of Rakim. I know, you know, I ain't no joke, but I'm not gonna sit here and lie to you and say I can name you 5 Rakim songs.
Rakim popularized, I think, modern flow. I'll give him credit for that. Like before that, it was kind of that Run DMC style of like 1, 2, buckle my shoe, and you know, Rakim came in with the before he became a team with making cinnamons instead of cones of ice cream. You know what I mean? Like, and the way he delivered everything was different in that regard. So, is there anybody else we're really missing that needs to be associated? We haven't done Sting or Triple H. We haven't done Tribe Called Quest. Sting is Sting like Common Sense, like really long career, respected but not.
You're gonna compare Sting to Common. Jeez.
Who's left to compare him to?
Not Common. Don't disrespect my GOAT like that, comparing them to Common. Oh, jeez. I don't know, man. Okay. When I think of Sting, all right, this is a guy who I feel like is very underappreciated
Mm-hmm.
because he didn't wrestle in WWE. He had a cup of coffee in WWE, but I don't really count that. He's not a WWE guy. He's made his bones on the smaller stages. All
Yeah.
right. So I'm thinking, who is a guy? I got it.
Most
MF
Def?
Doom. MF
Oh,
Doom. Yeah. Because MF Doom is a guy who's well respected and fans appreciate his greatness. But since he's always been on the underground, I feel like he doesn't get the flowers that he deserves. I feel like Sting and MF Doom are probably very, good comparisons.
we've done a pretty good job here. I mean, about as good as I think you can do. Triple H hasn't gotten. Buster Rhymes is maybe not on the. We didn't do Dr. Dre. He's not really a rapper. We didn't do Tribe.
You would have to say like Dr. Dre would have to be like a manager, like maybe Paul Heyman.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Paul Heyman, Dr. Dre, he gave us, Eminem, 50 Cent. He gave us, he had influences with Kendrick Lamar in the game. Paul Heyman, he's the wise man. He was the advocate for Brock Lesnar. He was a manager in WCW. He was the head of creative in SmackDown. So I feel like Dr. Dre is probably the best comparison.
Brock. That's the forget. You always forget about Brock because not allowed to talk about him anymore.
Who?